What's up guys, welcome back. ClouDx here, bringing you episode 3 of my vlog. I've been doing this for 3 Sundays straight and I've managed to stick to my target, so booyah. This one's gonna be about knowing your roles in Dota 2. I received a request on my last vlog, on episode 1 actually. Anvai Pramanik says, please talk about the importance of player roles. Support players need more respect. Yes, Anvai, your wish is my command, and I do agree with you. I do think that supports require more respect in the Indian scene in particular, where supports are sometimes referred to as goatees. Anyway guys, I'm going to jump straight into this one. The first one that I'm going to cover is, okay fine, here's my introduction. Let's begin with that. Role categories. First of all, you've got position 1 to 5. This analogy stems from the old Chinese farm priority system, where position 1 basically refers to the highest priority for farm, and position 5 refers to the heroes that require the least farm, and of course they're given the least priority towards farm and EXP. So position 1 is your hard carry, position 2 is your semi carry or your mid, position 3 is the off lane or the side lane solo, position 4 is the support, and position 5 is the hard support. Bear in mind guys that it doesn't always imply that position 2 semi carry would be your mid, or your position 3 off lane would be your side lane solo. There's always the chance that these roles could be shifted up as and when heroes require different priorities of farm, and I'd like to believe that the positions alter right throughout the game. I'll talk about that more when we get to the position 4 and 5 part. So position 1, that's your hard carry. Examples include Anti-Mage, Spectre, Terrorblade, Lifestealer, Faceless Void, etc. These are usually the heroes that have a devastating impact if you can give them a decent amount of space to farm and get levels. Required skills from someone playing the position 1 role. You've got to have map awareness. You've got to know when heroes are going to try and gank you, when they're going to try and smoke gank you, or when heroes are just missing in general. Make sure you're aware when you're split pushing in particular, or pushing out or farming a lane deep into enemy territory. Make sure that you're doing it only when you see heroes that can come and kill you on the other side of the map. Well, last hitting, that's the next one that I wanted to cover. So last hitting is something that should come naturally to most experienced players today. So make sure that if it's not coming to you, or if it's not already a natural process for you, make sure that you're doing it enough so that you don't need to focus on actually getting that last hit anymore. It should just be something that you do by nature. And when I say last hitting, don't just do this in the early game phase. Even in the later game phase, just focus on last hitting creeps as opposed to just going into autopilot mode and auto attacking creeps. When you're in the early game phase, last hitting under the tower is of particular significance. So you'll have to understand the rhythm that each creep wave has at every particular point in the game. This is something that should come intuitively and will come when you try and focus on getting last hits under your tower. You'll understand that every now and then you're gonna have to hit your range creep once before you actually go for the last hit when your tower is attacking it, or you'll have to do the same with your melee creeps every now and then as well. So again, just the more you practice your last hits, the better you should get at it. Lane control. When you're a carry, you want to make sure that the creep wave is as close to your tower as possible without your tower actually hitting it. Why do you want to do this? A, because last hitting on the tower is a little bit difficult even for the experienced professionals, and B, because the closer you are to your tower, the more difficult it is for the opponent's offlaner or the opponent laners to come in and try and leech that experience, because your supports are going to, chances are your supports are going to try and zone him out, and they're going to have a longer way to zone out the hero and possibly even score a kill. Fight or farm, split push decision making. This is your this is pretty standard when you're playing a carry as well. So you've got to know when you want to join your teammates in a fight, which heroes can join those heroes in team fights, which heroes can bring a lot of potential to a fight rather. So if you're playing something like a Faceless Void, once you get your Mask of Madness and your power treads up and running, you probably want to use that Chronosphere every time you possibly can, because it's one of the best disables in the game and it synergizes really well with your support heroes as well. So either you call your supports to your lane and try and get them to gank you, or you carry your TP, go gank somewhere else and then resume your farm. It's something that you should do with heroes like the Faceless Void. Meanwhile, on the other side of the spectrum, you've got a hero like the Anti-Mage that really can't do too much up until he's got pretty much 6 slotted with the Abyssal Blade and whatnot. So that's a hero that you almost always want to prioritize your farm on, and if ever there's a massive team fight where you think your team can do okay and not suffer too much of a loss while you can take down a tower or two, do it as an Anti-Mage. It's gonna look completely selfish. You're probably gonna get flamed for it in your games as well, in your pub games as well, but in the end, it's gonna benefit your team a lot more than had you gone into the team fight and not really killed anyone. Team fight positioning is something that, again, it's very common. It's something that all roles, well, pretty much all heroes and all players in the game need to be aware of. But when it comes to a one position hero or a carry, you probably don't want to be the one jumping into the fight head on, of course, unless you're something like a faceless void. So again, let's just roll back to our anti-mage example. If at all you do feel the need to go into a team fight, you can't be the one blinking into the front lines, abyssal blading a hero and starting to beat up on him. But there's a very good chance that the silencer in the other team is going to wait for you to do that and then silence you, shut you down, and then they're going to finish you off, and you're only going to get that one kill at the very best. So make sure that you know when's the right time to jump in and where you should be positioned to jump into the team fight as well. Alright, let's move on. Practice techniques when you're playing as a hard carry. Solo lobby last hits. This is something that of course you could load up a lobby by yourself and just try and last hits, improve your last hitting skills. Replays and streams, watch the professional players, watch guys like your host, maybe even your Eternal Envy. RTZ plays carry every now and then on his stream. In fact, he's going to be playing carry now going forward, so these are streamers that you probably want to watch and learn from. Self-replay analysis. Every time you think you've done something wrong, just watch your own replay, see what you did wrong, try and be as objective about it without actually punishing yourself too much, and just make sure you don't make the same mistakes the next time around, because if you're not learning from your mistakes, you're really not improving. Up next, position 2, that is the mid or the semi-carry role. Examples of these heroes include the Templar Assassin, the Shadow Fiend, Queen of Pain, Puck, Dragonite, etc. In general, these are heroes that can do a decent amount of damage and have a huge impact in the game if you give them a little bit of space and farm in the early to mid game phases. Required skills of a position 2 hero: you've got to have map awareness, so know when smoke ganks are incoming your way, know when heroes are trying to gank you, when supports are making rotations. Also, if you're one of those split push style heroes or if you're one of those tower dive style heroes, again, be aware of how many heroes could be in the vicinity and what they could do to you. Last hitting and lane control. Again, well, contrary to belief, a lot of people think that the middle lane is about dominating the other guy in the lane and winning a 1v1 matchup. In a certain sense, that's true, but more so than anything, you've got to make sure that you're getting a good amount of CS. You can't be just zoning out the other guy and letting him get all the farm in the world when you're not getting any farm. He's just gonna have to spend a little more on consumables to come back and do what he's doing, and the chances are that you're not gonna end up in a good situation if you haven't gotten too much farm by the 8 or 10 minute mark. So last hitting is something that you want to be aware of. Make sure that your CS isn't falling behind at the cost of harassing the opponent. Lane control. This is for the middle lane. It's a little peculiar. You need to be able to push out the lane as you get closer and closer to the 2-minute mark. This is particularly true for heroes that rely on bottles or rely on getting bottles and getting the runes. So a hero like Invoker might really not be too bothered about pushing out the lane close to the 2-minute mark, because his objective is to stay in the lane and get levels and farm and possibly even a Midas to accelerate that process. But if you're playing something like the Death Prophet or maybe even a Shadow Fiend, you want to be able to push out the lanes, go for the runes every 2 minutes, and which brings me to my next point, neutral stacking. So if you manage to push out the lane, which is well, at an odd number, maybe the 3-minute mark or the 5-minute mark, you're not going to be able to go for a rune because chances are that the support has taken it, or you've probably taken it yourself. So that's when you probably go back into your jungle, stack a neutral camp and come back so that you can clean it up later and get some bonus gold. This is even more so if this is even more effective when you're on the Radiant side, because it's a lot easier to stack double camps. Fog of War awareness. So two things you need to keep in mind here regarding Fog of War. First of all, know when enemy supports could be standing just outside your vision range. So if they could be standing outside your vision periphery and coming in for a gank, you want to be playing defensive. Second Fog of War mechanic that you need to understand is the slope mechanics. So every time you walk down into a river, there's a good chance you're going to lose vision of your enemy hero, and likewise for him, when he walks into your river, there's a chance he's going to lose vision of you. You could use this timing window to get a couple of auto attacks off on your opponent. Basically, this is something that gets amplified as night approaches in the game. Every 4 minutes you've got night sinking in, so make sure that you're making good use of Fog of War, and you might just be able to bait your enemy into making a mistake. Game tempo awareness. Again, this is something that a mid laner needs to keep an eye out on. So you've got to know whether your carry is doing okay, whether your off laners are dying too much, and if any lane does require a help, you should weigh the benefits and the cost. Know that if you go for a gank, your opponent hero is going to get some farm, and is it worth it to go and secure some farm on your carry as opposed to farming yourself in the lane and shutting down your opponent's farm. Make that decision knowing full well what the consequences will be like, and basically that's what game tempo awareness comes down to. Practice techniques. So the first technique that you could employ is a solo lobby Shadow Fiend training. So load up a lobby, a practice lobby of course, without any bots, without anybody in the game, and pick Shadow Fiend, head towards the middle lane. Try it on the Radiant side, try it on the Dire side. You want to be able to score about 60 to 100 last hits while stacking camps and getting runes. So just make sure that you're doing it. Basically, once you start doing it efficiently, it should come naturally to you, where you start pushing out the wave every 2 minutes or at the end of every minute. Then you go back to stack a camp, pick up a rune, and come back to rinse and repeat. Replays and streams, again, watch the guys like RTZ, Dendy, and whoever else plays mid. These guys know what they're doing. They've tried and tested multiple techniques, and you could definitely learn a lot from them. Minimap icon size changes. So there's a console command that you could employ to try and change your minimap's icon sizes. A lot of professionals, I've seen guys like Molini and a few others doing it, and it does seem to help when spotting those incoming ganks and support rotations. It just basically, what it does is it makes the hero icons on your minimap a lot more prominent, so you know when there's an enemy hero showing up and your eye automatically turns toward it. Eyes on the clock. This one is fairly important. So a couple of timings that you're going to need to keep track of when you're at the mid lane. Rune spawn every 2 minutes. You can stack camps at towards the ends of every minute. Every 4 minutes you've got night setting in, and every 6 minutes, well, at the 6 minute mark at least, your wards and your opponent's wards are most likely going to expire. So these are things that you need to be aware of. Beyond 6 minutes, basically try and play it a little safe, or if your supports are making a gank, don't give it away too obviously. 2 minutes, go for the runes. At the end of every minute, try and stack the camps, and 4 minutes, try and abuse Fog of War once you hit that night phase. Oops. Alright, up next we've got the position 3, that is the off lane hero or the side lane solo hero. Examples of these heroes include the Clockwork, Centaur, Nature's Prophet, Slark, Darkseer, Legion Commander, you name it. A lot of heroes could fit into the off lane today. In fact, I've even seen guys like Omni Knight and Pudges go off lane, and it works. It even works sometimes. Required skills. So as an offlaner, your primary objective is to stay alive and to get as much EXP and gold as you can while fending off 3 heroes on most circumstances. So gank awareness is something that you need to be aware of course. Make sure that you know, just keep an eye out for where the supports could possibly be, estimate their locations when you're trying to leech EXP in the lane, and just make sure that you're not getting caught off guard. Fog of War range, know when you're standing away from, when you're standing in the fog range, know when supports in the other team are standing in fog area, and again, just it basically boils down to being aware of incoming ganks and possible pickoffs. Experience range limits. Now, back in the old Dota 2 days, you could make a big circle around you and know when you're standing within the EXP range, but that kind of got patched out a while ago, so you don't have that advantage anymore. You've got to basically it's something that should start coming to you intuitively. I wouldn't say that you should focus too much on what the numbers are like, because it's kind of hard to estimate distance on the Dota map. At least this is a personal thing. But once you've got it down intuitively, what range you're standing in to leech EXP, and believe me, it's quite a huge EXP range. You should be abusing it. Stand in fog, get the EXP, run away, don't get caught. Try and leech experience from neutral camps that the enemy supports might be taking down as well. Side lane pull mechanics. So this is something that's specific to the top lane. When you're a Radiant offlaner, there's a hard camp that you could pull into your lane, and that basically disrupts the creep equilibrium completely, bringing the creeps closer to your tower if done right. Make sure that you've understood the timing of that pull, make sure that you're doing it right, and it's something that you should be doing a lot more in your games. This is something that I see a lot of offlaners overlooking. It's a very minor fact, it's a very minor technique that should be employed and has huge and devastating impacts. Alright, so practice techniques. The best way to become a better offlaner is actually to go into a game and play an offlane hero versus actual human beings that can think unlike bots. Replays and streams, watch the guys like Admiral Bulldog, watch any other players that are playing on the offlane. Most of the professionals, like I mentioned earlier, know what they're doing and you could learn a lot from them. Lobby games to practice pull. So this is in particular to learn that pull camp timing on the top lane. So make sure you load up a lobby, learn what the timing is like and what the creep equilibrium is like after and before you pull that camp. Position 4 and 5 support. So I've clubbed these two together because these roles are interchangeable most of the time, and it kind of boils down to the player more than the hero in my personal opinion, who plays what. So heroes that fit into this category are the Ogre, the Skyrath, Vengeful Spirit, Sand King, Dazzle, Shadow Demon, even Mirana on occasion. There's tons of heroes that could be played as a support today. Required skills. So lane control is something that a support should be aware of, even though this usually falls upon the carry, where he's got to control the creep equilibrium and hold it towards this tower. Every now and then you're going to be in the lane yourselves, shooting out a few AoE spells. Just make sure that you're not hitting creeps while you're zoning out an off lane hero, so that you manage to keep the creep equilibrium intact. Neutral creep control: if your carry does manage to goof up things, or if the opponent offlaner manages to mess up with the creep equilibrium, make sure that you know how to pull the neutral creep to the wave. Make sure how you know how to chain that neutral pull to the second pull camp if you're playing on the Radiant side, or even the Dire side for that matter. And you should be able to bring creep equilibrium back into control as soon as possible. Additionally, know the stack timings and know that you can go and stack when you're not doing anything in the lane as well. It's something that really helps your carries get ahead and get that additional bit of farm in the mid game phase. Ward awareness. There's two particular how should I say this? There's two particular situations that you should be aware of here. The first one is your neutral camp block. So if an offlaner comes and puts down an observer ward to block out your neutral camp, or even a sentry ward to block out your pull camp, make sure that you're dewarding it, because if you aren't, the creep wave is most likely gonna end up on his side of the closer to his side of the map, and that's gonna give him a lot more EXP than he should have deserved, and it gives your carry a lot less farm than he actually deserves. The second bit of ward awareness that you need to be aware of as a support is where the second ward is going to be. Basically, if it's going to be at a rune spot, whether it's going to be towards the middle lane, it's something that you're going to need to avoid when you're trying to make a rotation to gank the middle lane or any other lane for that matter. Overall situation awareness. So I'm a strong believer of the theory that supports basically set the tone and the balance of the entire early to mid game phase. If your supports play their cards right, they're basically setting things up so that your cores can basically dominate the mid and late game phases. But right, so as far as situation awareness goes, you need to be able to understand which lane needs a gank and when. You need to understand if you can zone out an offlaner effectively and secure farm for your carry, you should do it. But if the opponent carry has a lot more of an impact if given farm, consider going to gank him or zone him out instead. If middle lane is failing, make sure that you're going back to help him in whatever way you can, be it through a gank or maybe even setting up stack camps for him to pull back from. Just in general, keep a bird's eye view on the game and try and set the pace of the game as and when you see fit, because supports are those heroes that have the freedom and the leeway to move around the map as they see fit. Anyway, positioning is the next one. As a support, your duty is not to just put those observer wards and then die. No way, that is the worst mentality a support could possibly have. You've got to make sure that in a team fight you're positioning effectively, not allowing yourself to become a free kill to those carries, because then you're just an added source of gold to their farm tally. So make sure that you're positioning well and dishing out as much damage as you possibly can, but every now and then you're gonna have to throw your body at the enemy team to get your cores out to safety. So know the situation, position well for it, and play accordingly is what I'm trying to say. Practice techniques to become a better support player. Play in a stack, play with friends, play with people you know in general, because it's a lot easier to support players and people that you know and trust as opposed to random strangers on the internet. But of course that doesn't mean you don't play support in your games and you do selfish moves as well, but I mean, chances are that you're going to be a lot more comfortable supporting and communicating with your own stack. So communication and playing in a stack, two very important things to building yourself up as a support. Replays and streams, of course this is something that's extremely crucial as a support. See what the pros are doing, what kind of decisions they make in the early mid game and late game phase, what kind of skill builds, what kind of item builds, what kind of rotations they're making, and try and employ these techniques in your own games, and in no time you'll find yourself becoming a much better support player. Well guys, that pretty much concludes this episode of the vlog. I hope you guys have had a good time. I hope you guys have found this one informative, and of course if you have any more comments, if you'd like me to cover any particular topics, do leave them down in the comments below. If you've enjoyed, do give this video a like, and if you have any feedback for me as well, please don't hesitate to share it with me. This is ClouDx for now, signing out. Thank you for tuning in. If you've enjoyed, of course, like, share, subscribe, and yada yada whatnot, do a backflip. Later.